using her own world's alphabet. Fortunately, just the first letter, not a full word, and thus plausibly deniable. Just a personal cipher for marking resources. Distract him.
Say, if I want to pick up some skeever hides.
She traced a line to a spot southwest of the bear cave. I would go right around here. There's a farm about a mile upriver, and their garbage washes up along this shallow bend here, so the skeevers have gotten nice and fat. I'm expecting the current to change once we're over the spring melt, so they'll probably migrate in another month. Clever, Sero trailed, looking up from the map to meet her gaze. I am starting to see your point about the bandits. Ahem. Artwork. Vera nodded, irrationally pleased at the praise, before stuffing the unwelcome emotions back where they came from. Then again, fuck it. This was something she was good at. If that made Demon Chops less likely to embark on his "we're mean, lean, killing machines little girl" routine, all the better. See, Teldrin, I told you she'd be useful. Undnar was beaming at her like a proud parent. I can smell these things, I'm telling you. Hold your horses. Vera held her pinky against her mark for the forsworn encampment and pressed her thumb to the spot where the river crooked around the cliffs. There's a little path the rams use to get to the water on that side. The cliffs there are steep, but it's the shortest way to the redoubt if you don't want to trek all the way around to the northern part. The cliffs will give some higher ground if you want to pick them off at long range. The other side, you're both downhill and upwind from them. She looked up. I'll take you all the way to the foot of this cliff, to where the path starts, but no further. I'll wait for a day for you two to get back. I'll have healing potions and bandages if you come back banged up. After a day, if you're still not back, I'll head back to Markarth. What if the Forsworn capture us, lass? Won't you sweep in to the rescue? Undnar approximated heartbroken chagrin, not very convincingly. What if they do unspeakable things to our remains? Vera blew a raspberry. The Nord guffawed, slapping his knee. Your remains won't care, one way or another. I'll make an offering to RK on your behalf, if you'd like. She turned to the Dunmer. Any funerary rites I should know about. Whom should I beseech on your account, if it comes to that? She had meant it as a joke, but something bitter passed in the Dunmer's eyes. He stuffed it down quickly. Won't matter a whit, Outlander. Not at this stage. Vera shrugged. Fine with me. She opened the purse and counted the coins. Weiss. What are we looking for anyway? Undnar smiled broadly. Why, a sword, of course. Vera nodded. Not her problem. Up to the foot of the cliffs. No further. She left her 150 septimes with Bathala before meeting the duo at the city gates. Traveling with them turned out to be oddly easy. The Nord and the Dunmer had an efficient routine, established over what Vera was guessing were months, if not years, of joint travel. And while they were clearly unfamiliar with the area, they didn't make stupid mistakes. She hunted but outsourced dressing the kills to Sero, who turned out better at it. Frankly, Undnar didn't do shit except for tending the campfire and eating the food they cooked, and Vera was more than happy to be left to her own devices, trapping fowl and supplementing their meals with small game and whatever she could forage, mostly early greens, tender and juicy and sweet with spring sap. The summer Vera arrived had been arid, gold dry grass and powdery dust gilting the sun-warmed summits. Even if this year proved more rainy, there would still be a period of scarcity right around mid-year, and then the berries would start coming in, and the mushrooms after that. Then, starchy roots, fat from the warm months of soaking up sunlight and storing it as sugar. Undnar was his usual self on the road. No personality change there. The same loud, rude, irreverent humor, a goofy bear of a man, and as deceptively good-natured. The Dunmer, for his part, eased off his sardonic, growled half-threats after that moment in the tavern when something had passed between them over the map. Or before that, maybe, when Vera saw his snarling for what it was, and he saw her noticing. Recognition mirrored back, as if, in that moment, The languages their respective lives had left them with converged into some shared meaning. Demon Chops was abrasive, but he wasn't stupid or unobservant. Either way, whatever was growing there instead wasn't comfortable. Vera made sure she never had her back turned to either of the men, but it had settled into a kind of grudging camaraderie born of tired feet and shared fires, a pinched feeling, sore and almost sweet, that tugged at some long-buried heartstring, familiar, like plugging herself into a well-oiled mechanism. Once upon a time, Vera had been a part of something just like it, bigger, when everyone was still alive. Split City was held together through circuits of constant migration, on a kind of rotating schedule of flight and foraging, a careful choreography of divided tasks, once there was enough of them to share the labor. A long time ago, the cities of her world had been sedentary. Before ending up in Markarth, Vera couldn't have imagined it. How would you survive? Resources were always thin, but after the Citadel raided them in '89, there was barely anything left to scavenge, so you had to stay on the move. Jules had broached the topic first, or maybe Saeed. The memory had grown fuzzy around the edges, like a heat mirage. Not that it mattered. They talked about heading west, going towards what had once been Lake Huron. Used to be cottage country, Jules had explained. His great-great-grandparents were from those parts. Boats and farms and quaint little houses, most of them decomposing ruins, but no gangs. Or, well, fewer anyway. Martha and Vera had been hesitant. Ced had thrown his support behind Jules, and not just because he and Jules were lovers either. Ced, soft-eyed, with the scar across his mouth like a fishhook. The strategist of their group. 2 steps ahead, just quieter about it. Dima had been against it, categorically, but, in the end, he was outnumbered. It was ironic, in the end, which of them ended up implementing the plan. For several years, it was just a hypothetical, something that tied their group together as much as their other bonds did. A joint cause, the imaginary of a possible future. Vera shoved her hungry ghosts aside, turned her face to the sky, the setting sun warm on her skin. The breeze carried the tang of warm juniper and the crisp coolness of snowmelt. A lovely smell. Point was, it had been easy to fall into a rhythm with her 2 oddball companions, which was probably why she had allowed her guard to slip. No. Absolutely. No. Vera stared in horror at the pieces of armor. The term was a vast overstatement that Undnar was carefully laying out on the grass in front of her. It had taken them about a week to get to their intended destination, largely without a hitch. She should have known something like this would happen. It had all proceeded way too smoothly. Her eyes darted to Teldrin, not that she expected to find much support from those quarters. The Dunmer was pinching the bridge of his nose with the air of someone who grasped fully the futility of trying to dissuade the mad Nord from his chosen course of action. I am not putting this on, Undnar. No. I mean, why? What do you mean, why, lass? I thought it was obvious. We need that sword. The Forsworn have said sword in their possession. There is how many, Teldrin? 26. The last time I can. 26 Forsworn and 3 of us. Surely you can see how that's a problem. Vera glared at him mutely before gesturing with both hands at the armor. Actually, there are 26 Forsworn and 2 of you, since I'm not going. And I definitely don't see how this outfit here will solve the mathematical challenge you're facing. Undnar grinned like a hungry troll spotting a ram. Way I figure it, same rules apply, lass. You don't have to come anywhere near the encampment proper. All we need is to get past the sentries, so they don't turn us into target practice before we've even set foot into the camp, which is where you come in, Snowberry. You're going to sneak us in. Time to earn your keep, eh? Vera tried, and failed, not to sputter in entirely justified outrage. Undnar patted the armor on the ground. As your prisoners. She opened her mouth, and then closed it with an audible clack. She gestured to herself, in case the referent was unclear. Took you. She gestured at Undnar, and then, belatedly, included demon chops. As prisoners, forsworn women are very fierce, I hear. Savage, feral even, deadly opponents in combat. Setting aside the fact that I am not going anywhere, I am not a forsworn woman. They'll be able to spot the subterfuge a mile away. I don't move like them. I don't speak like them. Do you seriously think they won't be able to tell? Undnar shrugged, not the least bit discouraged. You're Breton. Put on the outfit. Add a bit of face paint to make you look fiercer. Nord, you are almost twice my size, and probably about 3 times my weight. And she pointed an angry finger at Sero, who wasn't doing shit to stop this disaster from toddling off a cliff. Looks like he could fillet me in his sleep. Demon Chops offered her a slight bow. I would make sure I was a weight for the occasion, if that helps. Asshole. Undnar scratched his head, meditating on this unexpected hurdle. You might have a point there, Snowberry. We'll have to really make sure the face paint is convincing. Children will help you with that, eh? The merc had the decency to groan. I don't recall face painting being part of my contract with you, Undnar. You hear this, Snowberry? Undnar rubbed his beard in aggrieved contemplation. See what I must contend with. This lout gets to muck around in mud or ash or whatever it is those forsworn used to decorate themselves with, and then he gets to put his grubby paws all over a pretty Breton lass. But no, not good enough. He wants me to pay him extra for it. As a matter of fact, Sero interjected, I don't recall my grubby paws being included in your new associate's contract either. He turned to Vera, his red eyes glinting in the semi-darkness. If you want my advice, Outlander, I suggest we both ask for more gold. We could split it later, if you're interested. Divines. Lo, this treachery. They are uniting against me, the unconscionable scoundrels. Undnar wailed at the night sky, brandishing both hands as if to call upon them the wrath of heaven. Be quiet, you madman. Vera shushed at him aggressively. You're going to bring the forsworn down upon us. How had she gotten herself into this mess and this completely insane conversation? Why was she even discussing the armor? Nothing remotely like this was part of her original agreement with the Nord, though Undnar seemed to have a fondness for reinterpreting the terms of a contract in new and creative ways. Still, if these two wanted to charge a forsworn camp all by their lonesome and become the Hagraven's playthings, that was certainly not her responsibility. She promised to wait a day, and she'd keep the promise, but anything else was not going to be her problem. Except, of course, it didn't quite work that way in practice. 26 to 2 wasn't just terrible odds. It was a suicide mission. They weren't walking out of there. Minimally, bickering in circles was delaying the inevitable. If we don't make it out, lass, then I can't pay you your full amount on account of being dead and all that. Undnar tried, approaching the problem from the now very familiar pecuniary direction. I've got it. He slapped his knee in time with the new, no doubt incrementally worse, idea. You didn't best us in fair combat. Cunning and treacherous snake that you forsworn women are. You overcame us with your feminine wiles. Vera blinked. What, both? Well, not at the same time. The mad Nord amended, before turning to Sero with an inquisitive look. Right. Or at the same time? The Dunmer rubbed his forehead, with the air of someone trying to ward off a migraine, and growled something about Mafala. I don't care how much you're paying me, Undnar. I'm not answering that. Bah! The Nord grinned. Spoil sport. Look, lass, if they see our hands are bound, it won't matter. They're not gonna ask the hows and the whys and the how comes. You just need to march us in there like you mean it, and then we'll take care of the rest. He squinted slyly. I'll raise your pay. 300 septims on the other end. How about it? Still no. She crossed her arms over her chest, as if that could protect her from the Nord's unbelievable pushiness and harebrained ideas. 400. Sero coughed into his fist. Yeah. And once the Forsworn resurrect my corpse, it can go shamble off and put that coin to good use by erecting a shrine to my stupidity. No fucking way. No, Undnar. Vera took a deep breath. Why don't you two don a disguise then? Just! She pointed her chin at the obnoxious piece of armor. Wherever you found this set. And don't tell me, because I don't want to know. I'm sure you could have lifted another one off a male Forsworn. Undnar heaved a despondent sigh. The sort of sigh that was meant to demonstrate how much of a paragon of patience he was being. Well, lass, they're mostly Breton. No offense, but you lot are itty-bitty. He demonstrated just how itty-bitty Bretons were by holding his thumb and forefinger about an inch apart, squinting at it with one eye. Besides, that armor doesn't cover much, if you catch my meaning. I'm just too big and he squinted, too blue or gray. Which is it, Sero? It's irrelevant, for starters. The Dunmer wrapped an oilcloth around the whetstone he had been using to hone his blade and shoved the bundle into the pack at his feet. We are wasting time. As I recall, the deal took us only as far as the bottom of the path. He pointed the business end of his blade at Vera, the dark, intricately carved metal catching the firelight. She made good on that. There is a long fissure atop the plateau about 60 paces south of where you'll come up. I've never used it myself, but you can see it from that cliff on the other side of the river. Vera pointed her thumb over his shoulder. It'll give you cover until the towers. Tavern met her gaze and nodded. My thanks. A trace of a smile touched his lip, the tracework of his tattoo drawing her attention to the asymmetry of his smirk. There was a kind of spare minimalism to him, now that her eyes had gotten used to his odd high-contrast coloring. Not so much arresting anymore, as almost peaceful. The sort of aesthetics that didn't clamor for your constant attention with being insistently pretty. Vera dragged her gaze from the Dunmer and returned the bow she had set aside earlier in favor of trying to wave the horrid armor away back into her lap. It was already restrung, so she busied herself with rubbing tallow into the wood to keep it waterproof. Not a task that needed to be done right this moment, but it would have to be done eventually anyway. She was drawing this out, stupid. Just rip off the Band-Aid. Another theatrical sigh from the buffoon-in-chief. You're really not going to help us, lass. No. She looked up, trying to break through the Nord's clowning to whatever was beneath it. Look, it's an unnecessary risk. It makes no strategic sense. Yeah, it's flashy. And marginally clever if you can pull it off, maybe. But I'm telling you, we won't pull it off. They'll know I'm not one of them, the same way I'd know you two are not from the Reach, even if I didn't know you from Adam. Who is this Adam you speak of, lass? Vera waved it off. A prat. From what I hear, it's not the point. I won't improve your chances by irritating the Forsworn with costuming. Just, either way, it's not a good idea. Can't you find another sword? There's not, exactly, a deficit from what I can tell. Undnar shook his head. Wish that we could, but no. It has to be this one.